has been very focused on the fine wines. One of the reasons is because a lot of Argentinian wines, Chilean wines start to export wines to Brazil, and the Brazilians is like, well, why am I drinking? And the people was doing that big American species grapes wine, because the wine is not so great. People start to compare the wines that was in the shelves from Brazil and the wines that actually come from Argentina and Chile, and it's like, well, tastes much better. And then it started to create the concept in Brazil that anything from overseas is better than actually the Brazilian wine.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio today, about to have a conversation all the way out to Adelaide, Australia, with Priscilla Hennekam. Introductions in just a moment. Wine Talks, of course, available on iHeartRadio, Pano, Spotify, wherever you hang out for podcasting. And at Total Wine and More, find the best gifts for everyone on your list, whether it's a Cabernet for Sis or a single-barrel bourbon that Dad would love. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, you'll always find what you love and love what you find at Total Wine and More. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly, B21. Our new sponsor for the next few episodes as we head into the holidays, so we're excited to have Total Wine on board. Here to have a conversation with Priscilla. And after all this time of trying to get together, I'm so happy to have you on the show. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you so much. It was so nice to be able to be here. Thank you.
Well, we've had an interesting relationship on LinkedIn, and, I look for interesting stories to tell, and that's what this show is about, is telling the stories of wine. So tell me, that accent, it's a fascinating accent, because I know that you speak Portuguese as your native language and Spanish, but then you're in Australia, so when your English has a little bit of a twang, a little Australian twang to it. How did you end up in Australia from being born in Brazil?
Yeah. So I always be fascinated about wine when I was 20s. So was in the school, and I was going to university in Brazil. So I had a class about wine and just got in love, and they say, like, look, I think I can go around the world and work in the wine industry. So went to Argentina first, lived in Argentina, Mendoza for 4 years. And after that, I decided to come to Australia. And here I'm here for over 7 years now. So always following the wine stories in the wine industry. So being Mendoza, being in the Barossa Valley as well here in Australia. Mm-hmm. I spent my first 5 years in Australia in the Barossa Valley, learning about everything about like vineyards and wineries, working different wineries as well, all across the board, like Priscilla Hennekam. And then, so always being passionate about wine. I always wanted to be involved. Always wanted to be working with wines. And I wanted to see more than just Brazil. I wanted to see what's happening around the world. So, so that's why moving from Mendoza to Australia, visiting Europe as well.
Quite a track. And I was thinking, reflecting, since you had asked, my career here, and rather voluminous, but all the years and all the wines I've tasted, I can only remember featuring in the club, and we bought a lot of wine, one Brazilian Chardonnay, and it had an American name, James something on it, but it was a Chardonnay. It was very nice. It was, my club was all about value, so the wines were $10 to $15, but Marcus James, that's what it was called, Marcus James.
Marcus James, yes.
You know the wine?
Yes.
It was great. I mean, it was great value. But why would I only have seen? Huh?
It's a cheaper wine, right? It's like, was it an expensive wine?
No. I don't. Like I said, my whole business for 35 years was really around wines that retailed for 10 in the early days to 18 as we sold the company. But why is that? Was South America so prolific with wine, and Brazil closer to Central America, right? How is it we don't see much from Brazil and the rest of the world?
Very good question, Paul. There is a reason for that. So the whole Brazil, like all South America, probably you know that. So the main language is Spanish, because the country Spain actually went into South America to be able to colonize the most of South America. But Portugal actually went to Brazil. So, and that is why we speak Portuguese, and the other countries in South America speak Spanish. So the Portuguese people had different mind of the Spanish people. So the Portuguese people don't wanted to do anything with wine because they thought there would be a competition with Portugal.
Mm.
Spanish people went to Argentina, Chile, and they said like, no, let's do some, like, we have the lanes, we have soils, we have good climate, let's plant some vines. So different mindset. So they actually influenced it so much in the wine industry between Brazil, Chile, and in the other in Argentina, and other parts of South America. So then always being a like in Portugal, they didn't want to do anything with wine in Brazil because it would be a competition with Portugal, so they don't wanted to do that. And that is why they planting grapes, but the grapes for eat, not for like the Vit Americans, not necessarily for the vitiviniferous way we use it for wines, different species. And then that is why the biggest production is still in Brazil. It's for Vit Americans, like Concordas, Isabel, like you're probably familiar with those things because I think in US you have quite a bit. And yeah, so that is the way we still have a big production that, but the last 10 years has been very focused on the fine wines. One of the reasons is because a lot of Argentinian wines, Chilean wines, they start to export wines to Brazil, and the Brazilians is like, well, why am I drinking? And the people was doing that Vit American species grapes wine, because the wine is not so great.
Mm-hmm.
And then people start to compare the wines that was in the shelves from Brazil and the wines that actually come from Argentina and Chile. And it's like, well, tastes much better. This is much better wine. And then you start to create the concept in Brazil that anything from overseas is better than actually the Brazilian wines. And then they started to not buy these wines anymore with so much like how it was in the old days.
Hey, have a listen to a show I just released with Gavin Sachs. Gavin Sachs is a PhD. He's a doctorate in Cornell University, whose job it is to figure out how to get canned wine to last more than 6 months in the can. So he's working on a food grade lining, as they call it, for 24 months. And it's an interesting conversation because the whole motivation is about the carbon footprint of a bottle. And I think we had a sort of a disagreement in the idea, but a very sharp man, obviously very smart. So
that is why the last 10, 15 years, they start to planting more fine, like different species, like the vitiviníferous, and then making more the fine wines, the ones we know, like Chardonnay, Shiraz or Syrah, the ones we familiar with, like the grapes we familiar with. So that's a new market for us. It still is pretty young. So let's say 15 years. It's not as big as many other places in the world. We started to do these ones, but it's getting big and big and increasing. Now we changed the perception of the only wines from overseas is actually good. We're still learning about how we can improve in Brazilian wines. But yeah, so it's been very amazing to see, like 10 years ago when 12 years ago when I left Brazil, when I went to restaurants, we actually have like a jar with the wine, and the wine list was so having not many options. We need to go into very expensive restaurants to be able to drink more wines, and the wines was incredible expensive and not much people could actually buy. 12 years after, like when I come back to Brazil, I went to Brazil in May of this year. We have wines absolutely everywhere. We have wines very affordable for $30. We can drink a wine in the restaurants. Before, and 12 years ago, we never talking about $30, $40 to be able to buy wine in the restaurants in Brazil. So it's been like a big change. The game in Brazil and the wine industry changes so much and increasing. So it's one of the only countries in the world that not decreasing on the drink of wine, they're actually increasing globally.
Well, it happens. Let me slow you down there a second. That happens as countries learn about wine. They typically start with the expensive stuff because the stuff they know. Some of the brands, particularly Asian markets, will try and just the Japanese are actually well ahead of the Chinese in their palates, so they're realizing they can get great wines at valued prices and don't have to drink Lafite, Rothschilds, or Opus One, to get a little glass of wine. But it's interesting that Brazil would emerge like that, particularly if it's a Portuguese-speaking country. Portugal's had its sort of apex of still wines. I mean, in 1993, we went to Vinexpo. You couldn't drink the still wines. You couldn't drink Vino Verde. You couldn't drink any of the reds, and they've emerged quite a bit. What landed you in Australia, though? Why would with all the wine countries in the world, with French, Italian, German, American, South American, what brought you to Australia to learn more about the industry and develop whatever you're working on?
I do like it more. I love the wines, but I like the culture in Australia as well. I guess it's very similar to Brazil. I think in tasting and how we live and how we treat other people and how it happens, so we wanted to be around us. I think it's pretty similar to Brazil. I think like we tell. Like we have a joke in Brazil, Australia is the country, is a Brazil like it actually works. So here the economy is much better than Brazil. Everyone knows that. And then, so in Brazil, we always say like Australia is like Brazil, but is a country actually work. Like the economy actually work.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's the talk we have in Brazil. So we actually have lots of, like even the climate is quite warm here, and in Brazil it's quite warm as well. So we have lots of things similar between Australia and Brazil. And in Brazil, we know so much about Australia as a country. We can live in a warmer place. The people here is happier, and the culture is more similar to Brazilian culture. And then, like all these things is making, like we have a big population of Brazilians living in Australia.
Do they have Vegemite in Brazil? I don't think.
Not yet. We're
So
still learning
disgusting.
to eat a Vegemite.
So
They don't
disgusting
like
stuff.
it.
So he said, I'm reading on your resume. It says, since arriving in Adelaide, Priscilla has immersed herself in the wine industry. However, when COVID hit, the cell case. So when you say immersed in the wine industry, I mean, there's so many pieces of this. And you left your home country to come to Australia to figure something out. What were you trying to figure out, or did you not know? You just knew you wanted to be in this industry and maybe have an impact.
Yes, exactly right, Paul. I guess I love to work in spaces that I don't know, like it, and I like it to create things. I love it to be able to know, like I gave it boring if I just do the same thing I has done like for many, many years, or I know how to do it. I like it to be able to work with it, different things, like exciting things, like, well, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. And I guess Australia was like that. So when I came here, I was like, well, I knew the basis of like main regions and main things, main grapes, but I didn't know as much about the industry, how it works in the retail, who was working in the wineries, what they do here different, what the rest of the world, and was so lots of unknown things is like make me think, well, I wanted to be there and I wanted to know what's going on. And yeah, I always working in these spaces. I always try to push myself to learning something new, to work with different things,
But
to be able.
what are you doing? I mean, you have a lot of variety on your resume. So like you mentioned, you're going to launch a site this week or next week or the week after. I see you put on some tastings. You have a show coming up tomorrow called Thinking Outside the Box. You just broadening your scope in wine because it's so complicated and there's so many things to learn, or you're focusing on retail? Are you focusing on consultants? What are you working on?
Good question, Paul. So I being in the retail, I being in the wineries, I being in the cellar hands, the process of make wines, I've been across all the different markets in the wine industry. Now I am in the export market. I became like the only specialist in the Brazilian market in Australia. So we work with different wineries and just to explore the Brazilian market space. We created different events as well. So we did the first Australia Wine Fair in Brazil. We created like the first wine course in Portuguese, Australia wine course, that was about Australia wines in Portuguese language. So we create lots of new things, new opportunities for the new Australian producers to go to Brazil. But we do the opposite as well. I work for a winery in Brazil. So we just did with the consulate in Australia one event with about different wines around the world. We actually represent Brazil with the wine we're working for in Brazil, so in Vania. So we do lots of things, any connections between Australia and Brazil. We actually help it to making connections through the wine. That's how it goes. So we work with the two main countries all the time. So
let me slow you down there. What you're introducing Australian wines to Brazil, it sounds like, and I mean that's an education in itself. I mean, even Australian wines in America have serious ebbs and flows. They sometimes they're very popular, and right now they're not so popular. Yeah. And so you felt like Brazilian wine market was ready for Australian wines. What is the process in Brazil for buying wine? In other words, let's say you're going to export Australian wine to Brazil.
Yeah.
Is there an importer exporter in Brazil? Is there a distributor in Brazil? Do you sell it direct to the retailers and the restaurants? How is that? What's the structure of that when you do that?
It's much easier than US, though.
It's better, or it's harder, or is it easier?
US, you have all these tiers. You need to go. Oh my gosh, it's insane to work with like all the tiers, and you can't really go through. So, in Brazil, it's pretty much we don't have so much that rules. If a restaurants want to come into Australia and buy 2 or 3 pallets, we can sell. But most of the times, what we see, what is the biggest our clients is actually importers, and they work with containers because the containers work cheaper because it's so far so from where we are to Brazil. So if we just do 1 or 2 or 3 pallets, it's okay, but it's going to be more expensive. Usually we just do mixed containers with different price range, so then they actually diminish the risks of the wines when you get there in another country. So the last year to this year, we already increased 300% in Australian wines and the low base.
That's great.
In Brazil, and the low base, because it's always been low base. So it was like it represented like about 1% of Australian wines in Brazil. It's not huge. Portuguese, Spain, Portuguese wines and Chilean and Argentine wines, they are the biggest.
They're the big ones. American?
Yeah,
No.
In America, not much. I think it's probably similar to Australia, so it's a small amount. But yeah, so probably American is still doing better than Australia, though, because Australia it was nothing. No one actually doing anything. No one was promoting or doing anything till we actually start to do things and get a taste for Wine Australia. Wine Australia never been in Brazil before, so we went the first time May of this year. So it has been a lot of talking about it. We have a big issue in Australia at the moment. You probably know that China completely put a lot of tariffs on and Australian wine, so they stopped it to send the wine to Australia. So now we have lots of wines that don't have where to go. And then they really need to find new markets for export.
It's not easy business, and that's kind of the question I was pushing on why you went to Australia to do it. It's hard in Australia, particularly since, like I mentioned earlier, when I first bought the company in 1988, the first thing I did was buy a Chardonnay from Llewellyn from Victoria, and then.
You always stay for Margaret and River, that one, that's the Chardonnay.
Yeah, there's Chardonnay. Yeah, it was great. This is a long time. This is I think it was the 87 that I bought, something like that. But the point is, they've come and gone. There are some. I brought in a container of Penfolds late harvest Riesling in 375s, which is like unheard of amount of wine at the time, and it was well received. And then prices change, or the dollar changes, or the ambiance of Australian wine, at least in the American palate, changes. And then all of a sudden you can't find them. And now people think if you talk about Australian wine in America, they think it's yellowtail, which is horrible, right? I mean, that's just not really wine. So what do you do then? Are you hand selling this? Are you inviting restaurateurs to Australia to experience the trade? Are you in Brazil hand selling bottles of Australian wine to the restaurateurs? Do you have an agent in Brazil that handles some of this logistics for you? I mean, this is a complicated thing.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing. Exactly right. Like I told you, I like complicated things. I like to work with the places.
Nobody says that on purpose. Nobody says that on purpose. They like complicated.
I like things that most people that don't know the answers. I just
What do you?
um,
I saw your WSET 3 and you're working on your diploma, correct?
yes, I
And
am.
why? Why? Just for the knowledge base, or do you want the certificate for your career? Or what do you want to do with it?
It's a good question, Paul.
I try to
Um,
answer.
I was well on the level three. I was trying to always try to learn different things, and I felt like level 4 will give me more knowledge and things, and I'm still working on because I think I still had one exam to do it. But at the same time, I'm more interested in business and interested to learning about other areas as well, like sales, advertising, social media, personal branding, other things. So at the same time, it became lots of things learning. And then I stopped in my Western for putting on the side for a little bit. I will gonna go back to finish my last exam. But yeah, I guess that the Western for is good. You learn a lot about vineyards. You learn about climate, clones, and how they process and the making wine. And I think that's very valuable knowledge, so we can use it for some of the things. But I think at the moment you really need to understand business if you wanted to survive in these crises, because the wine industry is in crisis now. So we know globally, the consumption is going down. We really need to start to thinking outside of the box because the old strategy is not working. So I'm more on these positions at the moment in thinking about technology, how the technology can embrace in the wine industry, how they can help it to get out of this crisis, and then things like that. That's just not in the books of Western or Court of Master Sommelier, or these answers. They are not anywhere, and you need to figure it out yourself.
Was that
That's probably that's what I am is try to be pushing myself at
was
the
that
moment.
was that was that disheartening, or was that a surprise? I mean, I've got at least 100 wine books here that I've mostly dabbled through, probably another 200 in boxes. And, so you can learn whatever you want to learn about wine if you're passionate enough to learn it. Did you set out with WSET or any other diplomas thinking that was going to teach you the wine business? And you realized later that it really was about winemaking and terroir and all the things that go into making a bottle of wine versus
Yeah.
the reality of wine, which is we have to make a profit, we have to sell it,
Exactly.
and once
You
you get into that
understand
part,
me. Yeah. Yeah.
it's very it's not complicated. I won't use that word again, but um, and I always I have great respect for the WSET program, which said I have incredible respect for the Master of Wine program. I've had many on the show, and I have many friends who are Master of Wines and Master Somms, but um, it's different when you find a practicing Master of Wine, right? All of a sudden now they've taken their knowledge and wow, I gotta spend $1 on a bottle and 50 cents on a label and put the stuff in the it's a different world then because we still have to sell the stuff. So did that realization come and you went, wait a minute, I want to learn more about business, or you knew that getting the WSET was just about
I didn't know that. I was thinking like when you see the Western for, they tell you like they have a wine business, they have the like a winemaking, or to know like you have your D1, D2, D3, D4. They have some research. The research was quite cool because I did about Australian wines. Um, but like having good things about it. I'm not regretting. I'm still want to finish. But I need and I have to agree with you. The knowledge is good. If I think it depends what we do. I think if you're not solve problems, if you're not in the business, you just talk with consumers and then in retail space, the problem is amazing though. But if you wanted to actually grow yourself and solve problems, be able to stand out of the ground, I think you need to do more than just start with it. I think you need to actually see what the problems are, solve the problems, help the people, help the industry to actually think what the opportunities are. Because sometimes it's harder to think and to find than when you are in the stress. So I guess the WSET is very good, and I agree with you. I have lots of respect about the WSET Code of Master Sommelier in US or any other studies, wine studies around the world. But I believe we need much more than just the vineyards, soil, climate, DOC, rules. I think we need much more than that. We need bigger minds in the wine industry. We need people actually making things working and thinking. I think we need people thinking, like not only doing what they have been told, but then actually ask themselves why I'm doing this.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit, just as we're talking, and just see if I can get you to articulate something. Yeah, I mean, because the product, the first problem with wine is that if you asked 100,000 people in America, let's say it's one of the leading wine drinking countries in the world, at least by total consumption, that maybe 25%, maybe 25,000 would raise their hand that they drink wine. But really, that includes somebody that goes to the local Italian Italian cheesy restaurant and orders a glass of the house Chianti. They would raise their hand that they drink wine. But really, when it comes down to understanding Australian wines or Brazilian or Portuguese wines, they're really not interested. So really, the drinking population of a wine where you're trying to educate somebody on what it's about is probably like 5% of the total population. So you're down there. And so you're when we have a crisis like we have today, I'm not going to say crisis, probably too big a word. Wine consumption's off dramatically in all parts of the world, and production's up, and so we have sort of this market problem right now. What do you say? Think out of the box. What do you suggest? Well, you have a show tomorrow called Thinking Out of the Box. I was going to jump in if I could. I have to go to the doctor, but what are you going to talk about?
I talk about how we can actually think. We have a case of study cases. I'm gonna bring some study cases in the library tomorrow. When actually people can see the old strategies is definitely not working.
Well, let's define that for a second. Tell me what that means. The old strategy.
All the strategies. Everyone is actually looking for scores in the wines. Everyone is still looking for to tell them to how premium the wine is, because they using that yeast or they making these or making that. They really care about how the wine is made and how the vineyards. But if you see Apple or very big other brands in the other industries, they don't tell me how they make it, the old technology inside of the computer. They do. They know, because I won't be able to understand. I won't be able to listen that because I don't know I don't know how, in everything, the names inside of the computer, all these things inside, and how they make it, the technology being better than the competition. They don't talking about that.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, so if you see other brands as well, Nike, for example, they don't talk about, I have the better shoes in the world. They no one, the big brands, the famous brands, they actually people outside of the wine industry, they actually making money and they making the businesses actually work. They're not talking about how they make the shoes. They don't make how they make the computers or they make the phones. They're not talking about these things. They actually talking about value. They how actually helping in my life. What you can do to stand up the crowdings. It's a very competitive marketing. So one of the study cases I want to talk about is one you probably know they actually target US is the 19 crimes. 19 Crimes, it was thinking about men that doesn't drink wine. They use the
Okay, so
uh
I think
the
you're going to step
the
into
labels.
some treacherous territory, particularly with me. So, because the stuff is horrible. And they make,
I
wait a
know,
minute.
but they sell absolutely
Okay, so that's where
so much.
this is where we're going
They
to divide ourselves because they make Martha Stewart's wines, they make Cali Red for Snoop Dogg, all this stuff. Okay, I get it. I get it that the wine industry has always needed an entry level wine, just like 1974 when Sutter Home invented White Zinfandel, Mr. Trinchero. That those are important things to have, and it brings people to the table that otherwise wouldn't come to the table. But then you've got the purist in the wine world, and I guess I consider myself one of those people because I'm more romantic about the product.
Yes.
And I think I agree with you in this to a certain extent. This idea of talking about terroir probably turns a lot of people off, and they don't understand what you're talking about. And I agree with that completely, but I agree with a different area. I agree with a different side of it. Like, what is the story? I don't want you to answer the question, but what is the value of putting some criminal from Australia and have him have an augmented reality expression of his crime? What value is that to the wine?
Well, they really think outside of the box, and they really sell, and they
Sell a
really
lot. So that's your objective.
they sell lots.
That's what you want to see.
They don't we wanted to I wanted to give a case here on this show now. So many like you think you're completely outside of the box. No, they're not necessarily they wanted to do the most premium wine. They wanted to make younger people, younger men that doesn't drink wine to be more drinking wine. They use influencer, they Snoop Dogg to be able to do the brand. I just wanted to see the facts more than nothing. I'm not talking about quality, I'm not talking about vineyards, I just talk about business. I'm talking about business. They sell a lot. They're doing very well for themselves, not just in US, but in Australia, because I work in retail. And all these younger people coming for buy 19 Crimes to the stores. All these younger people.
You see the face.
And then that's it, something like, oh, but the younger people like often like pet net and everything. Yes, it's a little bit. But what 19 Crimes Treasury Wine did was absolutely a business-minded people. They bring it
I
to
agree
people,
with that.
They bring it to people, technology, younger generation needed. We needed to attract some of the younger people. If not, the older people is going to die and we don't have new wine consumers. Each wine person, each wine consumers die, we need 6 people of the younger generation to be able to drink wine. And then they're not interested. If I talk with people come to the store and they say oh, I have this wine here, James Holiday, 95 points. They're going to look at me, it's like, is a singer? Who is James Holiday?
There was a Holiday just passed away in France. But I agree with that.
It's we can't use these older strategies to be able to engage with people for 22, 23, 24 years old. They don't care. They don't care if you James Holiday or Robert Parker give 95 points. They're not looking for that. If you don't really think about your future, if you don't use technology, if you don't use social media, if you don't use the things in the future to be able to bring yourself, I don't talking about the quality here. I know the quality of 19 Crimes and I agree with you. All selves, we have a different palate, you and me, because we're in the wine industry, we drinking so many wines, so we know what's good, what's not. But we need to talking as well, so many people we need to embrace the future. If we're not, the wine industry gonna die. So that's the business mind we need to think about it. I'm not talking about quality, but they don't really talking about, and then how we can actually engage in the new generation. Do you think if I talk about all these 19 Crimes come from the vineyards, has been 150 years old, they make a 25 years American guy buy that one?
No,
Probably
I
not.
mean, I agree with that, and I agree with that because I think the wine industry self-propagates its own aristocracy and its own, snobbiness, is for a simpler word, because we do that. But there is, of course, the marketplace where that's important to have and understand that. And I have this romantic position on not selling crap like that and not having it, and rather not have the drinker, because it's not what I've grown to appreciate in the wine world. Like would have worked if you had put a Coonawarra red, Cabernet from John Riddoch Vineyards in a bottle of 19 Crimes, this sophisticated buxom, Cabernet with chocolate oozing out of it. If you put that in a 19 Crimes bottle and did the same thing, do you think it would sell? Like if you actually put a real wine in the bottle, do you think it would sell?
It's, well, it's I think we have the perceptions because we wine studies, and then that was a conversation I actually had with one of wine producers, I think last week. We have the perception, and he was telling me like, we sell my wine so much, and we really reach like lots of the younger generation, and that's very cool. But like when I put in my wine to get scores, they never get a high scores. And I was telling him like, look, there's nothing wrong with that. You need to take it out of the scores in your mind, because who is actually give the score? Wine professionals. How the West or Court of Master Sommelier or any wine education teach us to put it how the wine is good. We have to be balanced. We have to be like length. You need to be complexity. Like you have to have all this blink intensity. They need to be there. If it's not in this box, we're gonna judge the wine is not good, because that's what we've been told to us. To be able to want to
I
be
don't know
good,
about that.
in order to be in this box. And then that's just why I've been studying for the whole my reset. They need to be the blink, the balance, the intensity, the length. No, sorry, the balance, the length, the intensity, and the complexity. That's what we call blink. So, and then if you not touch all these 4 boxes, then you start to getting low points. And then that's just the box we told you. And then you can't really see any other things. You can't really see other style. We don't really see other people, what they like or don't like the new generation. The new generation is drinking lots of, like, at least in Australia, I'm not sure about US, so you're happy to tell me. They really talking about the wine from Korean now, soju. It's like a peach and a different flavors.
Actually, it's still is, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's what they drink it. And then probably that's by this research, treasure wine, you just bring something is not for wine professional, because there's not the target. The target is actually 25 American guy. That's the wine they deliver. That's the wine they actually make successful. I think you need to work with your target. If you target the wine professionals, if you're targeting to getting scores for your wine, if you that is your target, it's okay. You're working different. We're gonna build different strategies. But I think the people we needed to think it's not about judging other industries what they do it. It understand what they do it as a business. And if they actually doing it and get it successful, we need to actually take the example to what we can do for ourselves, for what we want and what the wine we want. But I think it clearly, just to talk about vineyards or talk about scores, is not going to engage the new consumers. That's not working anymore.
I think that's right. I think that's right, but I think there's other ways to do it than to mass produce crap that tastes the same. And I say that, with all due respect, of course, because that if you ask a winemaker, what's your end game? If you ask any of the traditionalists, in fact, I just asked the CFO of Cheval Blanc, I said, what is the end game? as you massage all this and you hand off your winery to generations and generations of family, and you are practicing farming skills. They're farmers. I mean, the reality of wine is they're farmers. And so they're trying to get out of the soil the best stuff. Now, maybe your Blink demonstration sort of encapsulates what the objective is. But really the objective is I want to present to the public the best that earth can produce. That's the objective, always. And so the winemaker should get out of the way. That's clear. And so that's not the same wine we're talking about. You want to sell a lot. You want to produce a lot. You want to attract the young people to wine, which is a great, noble thing to do. But I have this romantic thing that eventually, as with me, I mean, I worked in, you can't see the picture next to me, my father and I in 1975 standing in his wine shop. The romantic part of wine is that one day, Priscilla, Haig, Paul K., at some point of our lives, we'll have that moment where they taste a real glass of wine and say, there's something very interesting here. And what I think you're saying is that, well, we need to get these kids, a younger generation, I'll call them kids. I have 3 millennials that I've raised, to come to the table. And we're going to use, for instance, with 19 Crimes, augmented reality, or as Gavin Sachs from Cornell says, we're going to use cans because that's the thing. And I have this problem with packaging and gimmicks to bring people to the table. But it's just me personally. And you're saying, no, we need to use those things. We need to use all the avenues, all the social network. I mean, I sent 33 million emails last year in my company. You know, I've spent $500,000 on Facebook, Google, and Instagram. So I get it. It's not an easy road to hoe. I get it. So if you're going to look for the people, that's where you got to look for them. But you want to bring more people to the table. We're not so concerned about the terroir, the structure, the acid content. We don't really care as long as they say, this is interesting. Maybe I should try some other Martha Stewart Chardonnay. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think we needed to get a foundation. I think we need to, if I need to building a building, I need to work in what is like on the basic first. To be able to build in the basic to people involved in the wine industry, we need to do something different. If you're not, what are you going to do? You're going to be doing the same thing and then still hire any people, or people who really like wine and still gotta drink it. But the base of the house is not working on. So if you're not working the base, forget it, these new people engaging.
How did you come to this conclusion that these aren't working?
Well, we can easily, if I don't know if you're working on the floor. If you work on the floor, if you talk with customers every day, you're gonna know what's going on. You're gonna listen. If you're good on the floor, listen, analyze, and then get a better feeling. So that was my issue. I was working the floor and the people just keeping doing the same thing, and I was just to see everyone losing sales. I like people coming here like, oh, I wanted this specific wine and this specific vintage. Oh, sorry, I don't have it. Can I help you with another one? Oh, no, that's fine. And they left. So the business, the winery didn't sell because I have the new vintage, but the old vintage, I didn't have it. The business didn't sell either, because, we lost the sale because we didn't have the specific vintage of the wine. So who is the winner here? Who's winning something? And if you're talking that with the new generation, that's exactly what they told me. If I told this is 95 James Holiday, or this is 97 Robert Parker, they look at me like, it's singer? Is the actors what these people are?
I agree with the scoring.
This is one of the things, and it really, when you talk with people in the wine industry, they really care about it. They really want to doing more and more and more about those things, and they wanted to show how the wine is good. But when at the end of the day, I see and then I was working with 4,000 labels, and then probably 1,000 they have 95 points. So what for me is the difference between 95 points from wine for America or 95 points of wine for Australia, 95 points of
I
wine
agree with
for
that completely.
Brazil. It's it's like I have no point of the difference. People really think that's the point of difference on the wine business. They are not, because I worked with consumers. I was on the floor talking with them. The problem is people doing the business, people on the high end, they put the winery, they don't talk with customers. They don't know what customers think. They don't know what customer behavior. They don't know what customers asking for. If you don't know that, it's very hard to you building a strategy. I don't know. Have you working actually on the floor and see actually what's happening?
I have a wine shop here.
Yeah, exactly. So you probably know that. So it is quite different when you work on the floor with people and you're just working only in making strategies. You need, there you go.
That's
Perfect.
1975. Looks at a wine shop.
Exactly. So you know what I'm talking about it. You know what I'm talking about
Obviously,
it.
the wine industry is a lot different than it was in 1975. So, but it's sort of, I'm going to say it's tongue in cheek. Is that not insulting to the industry or people that do this every day, that you don't know what you're talking about because you're not on the floor?
No, I'm sorry. I don't want it to say that. I just to say, like, I think we need to listen more actually people working on the floor. Because I think if people actually I think they don't give as much value though. Because everyone is in the floor, they never be listening about the higher end people. And then I think that missing connections, I really think it's something it could improve as well in the wine industry, because the people's on the floor, they really know what's going on.
Do you think
people that make these strategies, they need to listen those people. People listen those people, then you'll be able to build a strategy better. Because I think the population changed, the mindset changed, the social media changed also so much.
Changes every day. I mean, it's
changing every day.
That's a tough racket to stay up with social media.
The wine industry changing every day. So if you're doing the strategies how you did like 5 years ago, I would say your strategy is not up to date anymore. Because
5 days ago, it's two weeks ago.
Exactly, like even like 5 days or 2 weeks ago. Exactly right. I think you need to listen more of the people actually working on the floor. Because I think working the floor, at least in Australia, people pay very badly. They never have a voice. They never have a talkie. The people know so much what's going on about the business because they have the customers and they know how they can, some of them can think about how can improve, but they never have a voice to talk for these higher people then building the strategies for the business, because they don't think they actually have the knowledge or capacity enough. Mm-hmm. And then that's I think for me, that's the industry, because we have such industries like this, like one is so up and one is so down, and that these people are down, the people up don't think they have capacity to be able to help them in the strategies. That is why I think they started to not go on the right track. I think we need to thinking outside of the box. We need to thinking like what's going on. Technology is coming to change your life. Social media is coming to change your life. Everything's what we're thinking in the past is now it's cool. For example, other things is outside of the wine industry. It's this younger generation is all looking for coaching. They're not looking for 4 or 5 years like in university anymore. They're less and less people. So things start to change so much. And then the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, we're going to have this talking poll, and then we'll be like, oh my God, to remember 10 years ago how we were talking about it and looking like what it is now. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's going to change. And then we need to be prepared for the changes, be adapted to the changes very quickly. If you're not, we're going to be on the past. And that is what my thinking, my philosophy, my view, what I see like the changes coming too fast in the wine industry. every other business is actually building itself better for the adapting better for the innovations. And the wine industry, then just thinking, I did that for many, many years and I'm not going to change. I don't like innovation. I don't like it to change anything. So I think the wine industry they don't want to accept it. They don't want to adapt it. Can we actually?
Do you think they learned anything? You know, when we were in Napa, and we're almost on an hour already, which is unbelievable. When we were headed to Napa, just before COVID was on the horizon. People knew about it, and I had a conversation with the staff writer for the wine industry in the Napa Valley Register, and she's like, we don't even know how to chat here. In other words, I mean, obviously, a very elementary part of digital marketing is your website and having a chat button. And it made me think at the time, now you're talking 3 years ago, that if the boutique wineries in Napa Valley didn't have a chat button on their website, COVID was going to kill them unless they, had people on the phones. But then I thought also on the flip side, and it might play into what you're saying, which is, if these people are farmers, they don't know how to put somebody in front of a monitor and wait for the chat bell to go off and then answer questions and then place an order for somebody. They don't know how to do that. They weren't even thinking like that. They were thinking of, how can I get more people in the tasting room, which is obviously a very important part of their sales and a point of you're talking about working the floor. I mean, these people in the tasting rooms hear it all the time. But I will grant the fact that that's not the regular consumer who's going to go to Napa and spend $85 for a tasting. What are you going to do? We got to wrap this up. But how do you talk to wineries, or when you're discussing this idea, to prepare them for White Claw, for canned wines, ready to drink cocktails, soju, all the things that wine is up against to attract their attention? What are we going to do about that? You have an idea?
So I always talking very loud in all my social media, because we really need to start to thinking out the strategies. It's not necessary. I think it's not necessary canned wines is going to be for everyone. And I don't expecting that's going to be for everyone either. Because you needed to understand the product. You need to believe the product. You needed to really, because if you don't believe in something, don't do it. If you don't believe it to do it, don't do it. But I'm not telling you what you need to do. I mean, just to want to guide you, think different. If you just selling your wines on the same amount you did for the last 10 years, and you don't have any progress, or you don't want to increase your things, and you don't think you need it, it's fine. I probably not going to change you, because you don't want to change. You don't want to think outside of the box. So that's fine. But I wanted to give you opportunity of people don't see the opportunities as I can see, or they actually see the things around things ourselves. Because sometimes you just have something in your eyes, we can't see it. But when someone just take it out, it's like, oh yes, I can see what you see. Because when I started with my export wines for Brazil, when I started to promote Australian wines to Brazil, everyone's calling me crazy. Now I have meetings every week of the producers, try to get my help to how we can export to Brazil. They came in change. After China is gone, they really needed some people like me, then they start something earlier to be able to help them to get the other markets like South America.
Mm-hmm.
That's such an example. And then I am sure if we have more people is actually adapting the futures and understand the future and understand technology, because technology is going to hit the wine industry very, very heavily.
Mm-hmm.
I think someone actually can help them to understand. And I think that's the main thing as well. When you talk with technology people, when you talk with the wine industry, they putting these two together, they just don't understand each other. Because the technology the technology just have a very technology mind, and in the way they talk, and they just believe everyone's going to understand. But the wine industry never work with technology at all. They don't really know. It's like going to learning English for the first time. You don't understand anything. You know, it was crazy. That's what happened today. And I try to building like making that communication easier, facilitating that, and then understanding that things with the words can know the wine industry understand. And that is another missions I have. Like that's in my mission to be able to communicate the technology, the wine industry with the words they understand. Because if you make it too complicated, no one is gonna actually. It's the same for the wine. If the wine is too complicated for lots of people, lots of people don't want it to. If you're making this wine and tasting this, that, and then making like a speech of 20 minutes, they're gonna leave it because they think they're too complicated, they couldn't understand, and then that's what happened to me when I started working in the wine industry. I really thought more knowledge I could have it to people, more teaching about everything I know, I will make it more engaging or they more interested about wine. But in the end of the day, they left. They didn't buy anything because they make everything so complicated. When I was actually came to Australia, I started to sell wines because I didn't have any English when I came here. And I sell wine, you say like, oh, this is like tango, you know, like very elegant and blah, blah, blah. I sold much more wines when it just started having absolutely no English, and I made connection the wine with tango, samba, all these types of music.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. I have
no words to talk here. I couldn't talk about the strawberries or anything because I have no words. I didn't have these words. I didn't have that vocabulary.
Maybe it's just your cute personality, and you're engaging, and people will trust you. We're already at the end of our hour, and fascinating conversation. I hope we can do it again, and I'm looking forward to jumping in tomorrow on your call if I can. I like I said, interviews with a couple of appointments, but I'll certainly turn it on.
It was very interesting conversation, Paul. I think we actually making some disagreements here, and making this conversation became like
mine is about
very
that.
Interesting, fun. Yeah.
Seen a lot. So good luck with all of it, and we'll see you tomorrow, and then I'll keep apprised with you on LinkedIn and what other things we're doing, and maybe down the road when you make some more inroads in what you're trying to do, we'll do it again.
Okay. See you. Thank you, Paul, for
Yes, thank you. Very nice.
Bye.
Cheers.